Oh, Trey, now we get to the fun part of our previews. We have gone through the Power Five, or the Power Four, I should say. We have gone through teams like Notre Dame with Ty from the Solid Verbal. And now we enter the chaos zone where truly anything can happen. I feel like this is a scene from Whose Line Is It Anyway, where everything's made up. The points don't necessarily matter. We're going to be playing football on Tuesday nights. Can I interest you in a little Conference USA and Maction preview tonight?
Yes, you can. Absolutely, you can, Mitch, because as our friends at the Sickos committee like to say, all football is good football. You're
Sure.
playing it on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Of course, I'm going to tune in. And man, Mitch, I did some research. My local Conference USA team, the Sam Houston State Bearcats, eat 'em up cats, go orange, go blue. I can get season tickets for $25 a person. Now I have to buy four to get that deal, but I'll take that deal. I'll take that deal to get over there and watch a little CUSA football.
Didn't you say that also came with it's like the family pack? It
I
comes with
think
a dog and a
it's a
drink?
family deal. I think it might come with some dogs and maybe a soda or two. I'm not. I have to confirm. Someone in the Sam Houston State ticket office can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like a pretty dang good deal, Mitch.
That's right. We've made friends with the UTEP ticket office. So hey, if we want
They
to
still email me from
there
buying tickets 2 years ago.
you go. Oh man, well welcome in everybody to another edition of the Three Technique College Football Podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. That fine gentleman over there is Trey Reeves. I'm Mitch Mason. Garrett, a little under the weather tonight, so it's just two of us talking some Tuesday night football, Tuesday night two-step, perhaps. Now that we've got two conferences playing, I can't wait for the fall to get here. But Trey, you did the research on Conference USA. That blog post is going to come out very shortly on our Substack. I did the research on the Maction and accidentally published that. I think at like 9 p.m. on a Sunday night. I meant to schedule that for the next morning and got all excited. And so anyway, that's live on our Substack. If you'd like to go read that. If you're new here, subscribe, like the channel wherever you might be watching and or listening. We would love to have you as a part of the Jimmies and the Joes. As we have passed over 1,000 followers now on Twitter. We're marching towards that on YouTube. The podcast sphere continues to grow as well. And you know what? I think we're getting into some really fun sickos stuff. So if you're listening to the Conference USA and a Maction preview, welcome. You are family to us. And Trey, I think you're going to tickle the ivories here with Conference USA to start.
Yeah, let's jump right into Conference USA, a conference that first of all we should commend for still being around because we weren't sure that was going to happen this time a couple of years ago with all the realignment. It's a conference that, short of the Pac-12, I think has felt the winds of conference realignment like no other. But they do have a couple of really interesting teams, especially at the top. So I feel like you got to start with Liberty. Obviously, the undefeated season last year, Jamie Chadwell's first year, built on the foundation of Hugh Freeze. They come in there, Caden Salter and Quentin Cooley, dynamic duo in the rushing game that led the number one rushing offense in the entire country. Both those guys are back this year. They did lose their leading wide receiver in a guy in CJ Daniels, and they lost a few guys on the defensive side of the ball as well. But Mitch, they're looking like a team that's ready to run it back. And I don't see too many people on their schedule that are going to give them too many problems. I wrote in the preview that, just simply put, it's putrid. It's probably going to be the worst schedule in all of college football when all is said and done. And don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not bagging on Liberty for their schedule. I do think they could have maybe tried to schedule a couple Power 5 teams in there, but they've gone through a conference transition recently. We know that causes trouble. I won't try to bag on them too much. They do have a really interesting game against App State. Sure. September 28th, I believe. That should be about week 4, week 5. That's the only game on their entire schedule, if you buy into the SP Plus, that could even be considered a toss-up. The rest of them should be almost sharpied in as wins if you just look at what the predicted lines would be with the SP Plus. I know people have gripes with it. I happen to really enjoy looking at that level of metric, but I think the most interesting thing for me for Liberty this year, we can talk about the offense, we can talk about the run game. It's going to be electric. There's not going to be a lot of defenses that they fear when they go into the games. Is 13-0 good enough for Liberty? That's
Well,
my big question.
well, and that's a question that I asked in our group of 5 playoff contenders article, and I caught a lot of heat for the first article, the favorites coming out, and Liberty wasn't to be seen. They were in our second article, the next tier of G5 teams that can make the playoff. And listen, I understand people feeling like, hey, that might have that drew them off sides, right? I understand. Was that intended to be a bait and switch? No, absolutely not. You just had to wait for the second article to come out to get my explanation. But I asked that very question. If Liberty beats Appalachian State, which they very well might, who else on that schedule is impressive enough to earn the favor of the committee as they rank teams down the stretch, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the highest ranked group of 5 champion will get into the playoff, likely as the 12th seed. Liberty has the easiest path, the widest path to the playoff berth. But as I wrote, you get to a point where you have a 10 win Boise State, Memphis, Tulane, even a team that is a conference champion that might have 2 blemishes on a much tougher record. And Trey have a hard time not taking a Memphis squad that, lost
Florida
to
State.
Florida State,
Yeah.
right? But managed to win the American. They probably would have had to have beat Tulane in the final week of the regular season and then taken on UTSA or USF, somebody in that championship game. I distill the season into 3 weeks and I go, no, I'd rather take Memphis over Liberty. Not to mention, I know the playoff committee is supposed to delete previous seasons from their mind, but last season was not a convincing vote of confidence for the Liberty Flames as far as making the playoffs. So I don't know. Those are all the things that make talking season possible, that give us things to talk and write about. But at the end of the day, I don't have anything against Liberty. It feels like the schedule truly might be something that's too tall to overcome.
It's going to be their own worst enemy because I don't think they would even be in the conversation. I don't think a team from Conference USA is typically going to be in the conversation short of going undefeated.
Yeah.
Have to try to find a way to go undefeated, and unfortunately Liberty's schedule I think might be just a little too easy this year. If you add if you add a Virginia, because I know they've played them recently. If you add a Vanderbilt even maybe on this schedule, that just gives you a little bit more street cred for going out and trying to find somebody. But Mitch, they'll play just one top 40 offense from last year all season, and that's the trip to Boone to play Appalachian State. It's not like any way you slice it, you can't find a lot of plucky offenses, you can't find a lot of tough defenses. It's going to be really, really tough, and I'm glad you used Memphis as the example because last year, a lot of people talked about how SMU at 10-2, with only losses to Power 5, Oklahoma, and TCU, probably should have gotten that Fiesta Bowl bid over Liberty. Liberty got it. No shame to them for taking it, obviously.
No.
It was a huge moment for the Flames and a historic moment for the Flames. But I wonder if in the back of their minds, the committee is going to be thinking, yeah, but we might have messed that up last year, and we should probably give another conference a bone.
It might have been dangerous precedent that they set last year. And again, I think Liberty Flames feel like we're bagging on them, that we're anti-Liberty here. That's not the case at all. I mean, Liberty is a fun program to watch. I think we're both rooting for Jamie Chadwell.
Absolutely. Jamie Chadwell is one of my favorite coaches in all of college football.
Yeah, Caden Salter's a local kid, went to Cedar Hill High School, a program that I've covered for a number of years. So I am very familiar with what Liberty has to offer. And frankly, have nothing against him. But Trey, if I can interest you in just running down the schedule, you play Campbell to start, who doesn't have their star quarterback from last year. New Mexico State, who doesn't have anybody from last year.
We'll talk about them in a bit. Yeah.
Yep. UTEP in a full rebuild. East Carolina had one of the worst offenses in the country last season at Appalachian State. FIU, don't know who they are. Kennesaw State, welcome to the big leagues, my friend. Jacksonville State might be plucky. Maybe Zion Turner. Hello, maybe. At Mid Tennessee State, new coach. At Massachusetts, one of the worst teams in the FBS. Western Kentucky replacing their quarterback. And at Sam Houston, who I don't know if he knows that we're friendly with him. Carter Yates, Dave Campbell's beat writer, wrote Sam Houston has a ceiling of 11-1 this year. So I don't know. Maybe a maybe a little double dip in week 12 conference championship look? What do we say?
I mean, it's possible. We'll talk about the Bearcats here in just a little bit, but they did not make my contender tier. Spoiler alert in my article, but very fun to play with on NCAA 25,
Sure.
especially running a little modified triple option there. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse. Liberty, they're going to be the best team in the conference on paper. They're going to have the most talent in the conference on paper. Just wish they would schedule somebody. Just
Yep.
get me Boston College, get me Purdue, get me Vanderbilt, get me anybody
Sure.
from a power conference. Because I think, I mean, if they scheduled, they went out and scheduled a Virginia and a um, Oklahoma State. I'm just throwing random teams out there. They split those games, go 1-1. I think their resume is better than 13-0
Yeah.
by far, even with losing a game in that scenario.
Well, so take me from the Flames to maybe what's the next biggest contender in the conference? Western Kentucky. Fun
Yeah.
offense. Typically a lot of playmakers, but they've got some turnover as well. Where do you have the Hilltoppers ranking in Conference USA?
Yeah. Western Kentucky checked in on my contender tier. I think they are a team that's looking to get back to the conference championship game. They were really close last year. Austin Reed put up a lot of fun numbers at quarterback. They're replacing him with TJ Finley from Texas State and Auburn. But if you recall the famous Toastery Bowl last year, there was a
Yes.
kid named Caden Veltkamp
Yep.
who came off the bench as the then third string quarterback and just put on a show after the Hilltoppers fell down. I think it was 28-0 or 28-3 or something like that.
And like three straight interceptions from the starter, I
Yeah,
believe. Yeah.
it was crazy. Just a comedy of errors. They put Veltkamp in. He leads them back. So they've got a fun guy on the bench as well. I don't know that he's going to push to start over TJ Finley, but definitely have options at that position. Malachi Corley's gone as well, so they're going to have to find a way to replace the production. But Mitch, this is an offense that just plugs and plays guys, and it seems like they find an elite wide receiver to play in that system just year after year after year. They find a quarterback, they find a receiver, and just go to town and just rinse, wash, repeat. That's who Western Kentucky has been under Tyson Helton the last few years. Defense was not good last year. They gave up quite a few points. We're going to say that a lot about the teams in Conference USA.
Sure.
But they do have some guys, Hosea Wheeler, Anthony Johnson, both were getting some all-conference mentions last year. DeMarco Williams comes in from Ole Miss. He's a safety that has played in the rotation for the Rebels the last few years and could be a really nice piece for them on that back end. But the antithesis of Liberty when it comes to the schedule, Western Kentucky gets Alabama week 1. They also go to Boston College, and they're both of the other contenders in my contender tier for Conference USA, Liberty and Jacksonville State. They play both of those two teams on the road. So schedule doesn't do them any favors, but the good news is they spread those games out just a bit. There's a really nice crescendo. I misspoke. Jacksonville State is the one that has the other two on the road. I misspoke. Sorry about that. There's a natural crescendo to Western Kentucky's schedule where Jacksonville State and Liberty are at the very end of the year. So they go to Liberty and then host Jacksonville State the last 2 weeks of the year. So opportunity to build up after maybe taking their lumps early in the non-conference portion.
Speaking of Jacksonville State, they came out of nowhere last year. We certainly did not have them on our radar when we were doing previews at this point in 2023. What do you kind of anticipate Rich Rod's squad having on deck for their encore? It feels like it would be really hard to maybe repeat that success from a season ago, but then again, Rich Rod's a funny dude.
Well, I think like Western Kentucky, they have a system in place that is going to lead them to success. They used 2 quarterbacks last year, Zion Webb and the kid from Missouri. I think Missouri. That his name is escaping me right now. But Zion Webb was the running guy. They're bringing another Zion Turner from UConn to replace him, and that running game. That running game is going to be really, really good once again. They run a funky offense, a lot of run heavy offense. The only team that ran more than them last year was Air Force. So watch them compete with that. Like it came in. Obviously, defenses are going to adjust to that, but they have the athletes to run for that, and they have a couple good running backs coming in that both ran for over 450 yards and 5 yards per carry each coming back this year. So they lost their defensive coordinator. They had the best defense in the conference last year. Luke Olson's coming in to take over that role from Tulsa, I believe. But this is the team that has no favors with the conference schedule. They do play both Liberty and Western Kentucky on the road. And interesting non-conference, they got Coastal week 1. Coastal, I think, is going to be rebuilding. They go to Louisville in their big payday game. But it's an offense that I don't think is going to take too many steps back. I think Zion Turner coming in can run a similar type of offense as Zion Webb did. Webb was not known for his passing prowess last year. No. They did not rely on his arm very much. So I think they can bring in Zion Turner to do some similar things on offense. He's got the skill set to do that.
I know UConn was really sad to lose Turner. So I'm intrigued to see what the Gamecocks can do this season. That's it for your contender tier, right? Or do you have anybody else kind of slipping up?
That's it. That's my top 3. Now, other teams could sneak in, and I do want to shout out the guy that I was talking about. Logan Smothers is the passing option that I wanted to make sure I got his name in there.
There you go. Yeah. So those are your 3 contenders. Now, of course, in our written preview, we didn't just limit it to contenders. We also diagnosed fun storylines to watch. So first storyline in your article, you talk about New Mexico State, who we teased off the very beginning. They lost everybody. I mean, absolutely everybody. They were the Cinderella last year of college football. It felt like Jerry Kill has his moment in the sun, then decides, I think basically off of differences with the administration there in Las Cruces, to pseudo retire. He also has some health issues going on. But now he's at Vanderbilt. So is Diego Pavia. A lot of the playmakers that the Aggies had last season leave Las Cruces, are no longer at New Mexico State. So can the Aggies rebound? What do you expect from New Mexico State?
You know, it's interesting because Tony Sanchez is coming in, former UNLV head coach. He had his moments with the Rebels. And I think when he did, I'm trying to remember his story when he did get fired. I think it was kind of surprising because it looked like he was hopefully turning a corner at UNLV.
Well, hadn't they just gone like 7-5 or something?
I think they had. Yeah, I think they had, they'd started hot, I think, and still missed the bowl game. Like maybe started 3 or 4-0 and then faltered down the stretch. But it's a program that made their first bowl game last year since like 2013, I believe. But let go from UNLV, comes back in a head coaching role. They're going the JUCO route again. Parker Awad looks like he's going to be the starter in Las Cruces. Diego Pavia was a junior college product. So hopefully dipping back into that well and hoping to find some more magic. But you're right, man. They lost so much. It does feel like it's going to be a complete reset button. But who knows? They found some magic the last 2 years. A fun nugget I discovered. They made back-to-back bowl games for the first time since 1959 and 1960 these past 2 years. Like that, that's just so cool what Jerry Kill and Diego Pavia were able to do. But yeah, it's a full reset, it seems like this year.
I think that's what I'm most scared of with New Mexico State is when you think of the Aggies rebuild over the last couple of years, everybody thinks of, this is what Jerry Kill was able to come in and do. It felt like he resonated so much with the identity that he built in that program. Jerry Kill was New Mexico State. New Mexico State was Jerry Kill, at least publicly, right? Behind closed doors, evidently the administration and Coach Kill did not get along. But
it's a weird deal because I think they offered him like over $1 million in a contract extension, and it was a weird deal. I don't know who's at fault there.
Yeah.
Not an insider to New Mexico State football, obviously, but just a weird and sad for New Mexico State deal.
Yeah. Speaking of new coaches, UTEP and Middle Tennessee State both have new coaches this season. Scotty Walden brings a lot of vibes, kind of like pure vibes, out to the desert in El Paso. Derek Mason's more the steady hand, experience, a lot of success at the FBS level at Vanderbilt, and did some good things at Oklahoma State and Auburn as well as a coordinator. So what do you expect out of those two teams?
I mean, it's two opposite ends of the spectrum, right? In both ways. It's the young, hotshot, up and comer, offensive minded head coach and Scotty Walden. And you're right, he's increasing the vibes exponentially out there. Dana Dimel felt like he had turned a corner and then just couldn't get it done the last couple of years, unfortunately. But Derek Mason is the defensive, grizzled veteran, right? And both of those guys, I feel like, are going to be pretty successful long term. I don't know that this year is going to be the guy. Honestly, if I had to bet on somebody, I feel like I'd bet on Scotty Walden just from a
Yeah.
young, fresh mindset. Nothing against Derek Mason. It just feels like, how often do we see these older? Obviously, we're talking about a conference where Rich Rod almost won the dang thing last year, but it's not often that we see these former Power Five coaches that got ousted, maybe spend some time with a coordinator, come back to a G5 role and have success.
Right.
Look at what Tom Herman's doing at FAU right now. Look at, some other history. Obviously, there's other examples like Lane Kiffin went back to FAU, got his career reset, and is having success. You can find some good examples of that, but it feels like more often than not, that doesn't end well for the team that takes a chance on them.
Yeah, I will see what happens with Tom Herman and FAU. I know folks in Boca Raton are really excited about, like, they have everybody coming back this year. But you're right, like, outside of, I don't know, someone that passed through the Saban Clinic for Healing and Spirituality. Yeah, it's tough to find guys that immediately get plugged in, especially like you said at the Group of Five level. And you go, oh yeah, that guy, and see some sustained success. Walden had a lot of success at Austin P. And I tell you what,
Yeah.
UTEP's kind of the UTEP governors this year. Like, they brought almost that entire team over to El Paso from Austin P. So I'm curious to see what the Miners end up looking like. From all reports that I've read, it's a much more physical team. The team is very much bought in to what Scotty Walden is preaching out there. It just felt like Dana Dimel kind of quit. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, silently out loud. Like,
Well,
there was,
2022 was rough. It was that, like, the way that year ended, they were so close to getting to back-to-back bowl games
yeah.
and just came up short time and time again. That wears on you, I feel like. And 2023, it really showed.
I feel like Dana Dimel and Jimbo Fisher looked very similar on the sidelines towards the end of their tenure. Just like disheveled, like hair everywhere,
Just don't know
glasses
what to do.
askew.
Yep.
Yeah, ordering off the Denny's menu on the sideline. So I'm hopeful for UTSA. Middle Tennessee State, I mean, gosh, after the Fighting Stockstill are no more, I'm curious to see what the identity of the Blue Raiders will be under Derek Mason. But
I read, just quick side note, I read Phil Steele's preview of Middle Tennessee to prep for this article, and you could tell he was pretty ticked off that they fired Rick Stockstill,
yeah.
because he was the thinly veiled, like, this was a program that had never been to a bowl game before he got there. He went to 12 bowl games or something ridiculous like that. Just, and like the exclamation point in parentheses really did it for me. For Phil Steele, not happy that Stockstill is no longer the head coach at Middle Tennessee. But Derek Mason, we'll see what happens.
We will see what happens. Two teams that at least the fan base, I feel like, expects more than what they've gotten out of results the last few years. Florida International and Louisiana Tech. Those are two programs that seem like maybe they're going in geometrically opposed directions. Louisiana Tech, if you remember, was really psyched to get Sonny Cumbie, right? Son of the air raid tree. Louisiana Tech had historically had a pretty fun offense, couldn't stop anybody. Now the offense has just stunk, and the Bulldogs can't beat anybody. Are they turning it around this year, or are we kind of looking at another 3-9 type showing?
Time will tell, because these are, Louisiana Tech, 3-year bowl drought, had a couple really, really fun seasons right before the pandemic. But man, it's just hard to see. It's hard to see what the plan is the last couple of years. That's what troubles me the most about Louisiana Tech.
Yeah.
And my point on both Louisiana Tech and Florida International, who we can talk about in a second, you just don't want to get passed up, right? Because you're coming in, you have a few teams in the conference that you're ahead of in the pecking order right now, in Sam Houston, Kennesaw State. But Sam Houston, Jacksonville State, heck, even Missouri State and Delaware coming in a few years, those are programs that are behind you right now, but have championship and playoff winning cultures at the FCS level. And I don't think they're going to be down forever. So if you don't want to get passed up by former FCS teams, and maybe you've already been passed up by one in Jacksonville State, it seems that way.
Yeah.
Got to shape up really quickly.
You just got to find something that works on defense to start, and then Hank Bachmeier transfers in. Everybody thinks, oh yeah, we're going to be right back where we're used to, slinging the ball for 700 yards a game, and then yeah, that doesn't work out. He gets benched. He transfers out to Wake Forest now to run the slow mesh. The other side of that coin, FIU, I don't really know what to expect from them on the field, but boy,
I think their games are going to be a party. Their games will be a party.
Bottles, baby.
Dale, baby. Yeah, I mean, kudos to them for being innovative. Like all jokes aside, like I'm being dead serious. Like kudos to them for being innovative in a situation where you're always going to be second fiddle in your own city to the Miami Hurricanes. Mm-hmm. You got to find a way to be innovative and be attractive and get excitement around the program. And they certainly got everyone talking about FIU football for a couple days for maybe the first time ever when they announced that Pitbull partnership. So I think that's a really cool off the field storyline. On the field, not sure what we're going to see this year, but I think long term that's a really cool partnership and could just give them something that's attractive to recruits, attractive to prospective transfers. People talking about your program is always a good thing.
I think FIU should have a fun offense. At times, they really flashed last year, right? They've got a young quarterback who can kind of do it all, throw the ball, run as well. But man, I watched a little bit of FIU football last year, and it was like, great. They scored. Like, you just got to kind of pray the other team runs out of time because the defense isn't stopping anybody.
Right.
So, Mike McIntyre is still there, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
That's about as uninspiring a head coach as I think he can have right now. I love the off the field moves. Now we just got to raise the on field product enough. You can see the athletic department's investing in it. Like, they have a clear vision of what they want their brand to be and where they want to go on the field. Now can the football coach get them there? I don't know. Mike McIntyre's, like I said, not necessarily inspiring me towards excellence, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm rooting for the Panthers, that's for sure.
Yeah, it'd be fun if they were good.
Yeah. All right, last two in Conference USA. You mentioned recent FCS teams that have come up to this level. Sam Houston State made the transition last year. It was a brutal 3-9 season where they could have easily gone bowling if they hadn't found a way to lose their first 5 in a row by one score. I mean, it was just disgusting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it was, they lost their first 8 in a row total for rallying to win 3 of their last 4. But yeah, 5 losses by 7 points or less last year in total. Just brutally close, agonizingly close so many times, where they just lost the game late or had a lead and choked it away. But learning process, I think that's good long-term for them. They were a team that held a lot of guys out of their last year at FCS so that they could redshirt them and play them year one at FBS. Didn't quite work out for them how they hoped, but they have some fun pieces coming back, especially on offense. I really like Jace Bauer. I think he could be a really fun option at the quarterback position. You've got John Gentry at running back. Jay Ducker is another guy that could be getting a lot of snaps there. So fun pieces on offense. I think that they are going to take a good step forward this year. I think a lot of those games that they barely lost, that just tends to naturally flip. And so you could see them pushing for bowl eligibility this year based on just luck of the draw, honestly, more than anything else.
All right, you heard it here first. 9-3, Sam Houston State in 2024.
Easy.
Hey,
they've got a fun schedule. I will say they have a really fun schedule. They play Texas State at Reliant Stadium. That was a rivalry game when both of those two teams were in the FCS. So fun to see that coming back. They play Hawaii at home, I believe, in a non-conference game. That's one of the more random matchups that I can ever remember, but fun. Rice as well, I think, is one of their first game of the year. So interesting schedule. opportunities to rack up a few wins too.
Eat them up, Cats. Let's go.
Eat them up. And then Kennesaw State. We can talk about them
Yes.
to close out this segment. Ineligible for the postseason this year unless they catch a break like Jacksonville State. I don't think they necessarily need to worry about that.
I
But
don't think they need to worry about it.
hey, it's a fun, interesting offense. It's a pistol option. If you remember Colin Kaepernick at Nevada, think about that. That's what Kennesaw State's going to try to run. So if you can get the athletes in there, if you get the guys to run that offense, it's interesting, it's fun, it's different. Could be some interesting, fun Tuesday night, Wednesday night football this year.
It was not weird. It was an interesting decision by Kennesaw State to sacrifice last season.
They did the same thing that Sam Houston tried to do.
Yes. Yeah. They just decided, you know what, we're going to switch things up. They changed the offensive scheme to this pistol option attack. They thought, let's get as many guys ready to play at the FBS level as possible, and they stunk last year. So, we'll see what the Owls can bring this year. I think at the end of the day, it's just fascinating to watch a new storyline develop, right? Obviously, that program's been around for a while, but to us, to FBS fans, it feels like they're, being born for the first time, and a lot of fans will lay their eyes on Kennesaw State football for the first time ever, which is cool.
Well, they're really, honestly, a relatively new program. I think it's within the last 10, 15 years that they actually started their program even. So it's I could be wrong on that. Someone might want to fact check me on that, but
that sounds right.
Yeah, it's a relatively new program in general. So they got a lot of future ahead of them. Mm-hmm. Fun offense. Just give us some entertaining football this year. That's all we can really ask for.
All we ask for.
Well, let's go over to the MAC. And that was what you kind of took the lead on researching.
Yep.
Take me through your top contenders in the MAC. Who are we looking at to see? They eliminate divisions, obviously. So that's a big change from years past where East and West had very different dynamics of power. Who are the top contenders this year?
Yeah, so this year I really like 4 teams at the top. I like Miami of Ohio. They're the champs from last year. Northern Illinois, I think, has enough back this year to challenge Miami as the most complete team in the conference. Toledo is fun. We'll see what they have at quarterback. And then Bowling Green. I think Bowling Green is kind of the wild card here. Can Connor Bazelak put that offense together for 2024? And, they've got an interesting schedule. So those are the top 4 teams that I've got. We'll get to storylines in a minute, but if you're talking Maction, you have to start with Miami of Ohio. Chuck Martin's in his 11th season at the helm of the Red Hawks. He's got Brett Gabbert back as his opening day quarterback for the 12th season in the row. I mean, a Gabbert has been wearing a Red Hawks jersey for actually forever, but this will be the final season. So pour one out, prepare your eulogies. We're really hoping Gabbert can stay healthy. He was lost for the season against Toledo in the first time that they met up. Then Miami of Ohio ended up riding a backup performance to a MAC championship. So I'm curious to see what his health is throughout the rest of the regular season. They've got 4 or 5 starters back on the offensive line. Their wide receiver core was hit hard by the portal, but they've got a couple of really reliable guys from last year, Cade McDonald, Jack Coldiron, the tight end for Gabbert to throw to. The defense is what their calling card is. Martin's group finished with the 8th best scoring defense a season ago. That unit's breaking in a whole lot of new faces. So it's not a overly veteran group, but where there are veterans, it's in the front 7. So I think the Red Hawks should dominate the line of scrimmage. I feel pretty confident about that. Matt Salopek, Ty Wise are their 2 starting linebackers, and they're both all-conference guys, veteran leaders. They're the captains of that defense. They held Toledo with DeQuan Finn, by the way, who is the MAC Player of the Year, to just 14 points in the MAC championship game. So very, very stout defense. Hopefully they don't take too big of a step back from last year. The non-conference schedule is fascinating for Miami of Ohio. Like, this is where I think a lot of people are counting them out, but I wonder if they might be able to sneak up and keep Notre Dame busy, maybe win one of Northwestern or Cincinnati, and then set the table for the MAC slate. Once they get into conference, they've got to travel to Toledo on October the 5th. They need to survive a road trip to Bowling Green on the final weekend of the season. But they're certainly the favorite. I think Northern Illinois, who is probably the second best favorite, they come to Yager Stadium the weekend prior. So the end of the schedule is very difficult. The very beginning of the schedule is difficult in the non-conference. But ultimately, I think this is the most complete team on both sides of the ball, and I think the Redhawks are probably, if the MAC was going to have a miracle and get a playoff team, it would be Miami of Ohio.
They have the schedule for it. Like if they
Yeah.
go 2-1 in non-conference, knock off Northwestern, Cincinnati, or have a miracle against Notre Dame, I guess.
Sure.
Ty doesn't want to hear that, but and run the table in the MAC, I think they probably have the best resume short of another big G5 upset.
I think it's possible. I'm not. I did. We did a series of upsets to watch about a month or so ago, and Miami of Ohio over Cincinnati was one of those upsets that I had to watch. And Bearcat fans didn't necessarily want to hear that, but I think it's very possible. We saw it happen literally last year, where Cincinnati could not move the football, and the Redhawks were able to bite them. What is it? The Victory Bell, I think, is that
Yep,
rivalry game.
I
So
believe so.
I'm not saying that lightning strikes twice, but that is one of those upsets that if I was to even favor a group of five team, it might be that game.
Well, let's talk Northern Illinois. You mentioned him already. Rocky Lombardi no longer slinging it around, but
No.
take us through what the strength of that team is.
Yeah, so it'll be curious to see what we get out of the quarterback position. Ethan Hampton takes over. Hampton was, fine at times last season. He's got one of the best backs in the country, I think, in Ontario Brown in his backfield. So I think Northern Illinois is going to really lean on Brown's production on the ground. Out wide, Trayvon Rudolph is very quietly one of the best receivers in the country. This is a guy that I think could have gone to maybe the mid pack Power Five teams and started last year as a big physical wide receiver. I really like him, but he's stayed true to the Huskies, and so he's back for his final season. Always a threat to just decide, okay, this game's mine. I'm taking it over and go X mode on everybody. Offensive line also very veteran. They returned 4 projected starters. The defense is interesting because the defensive line is their strength. They've got edge rushers Roy Williams, Rasheem Thomas. There is, I think, decorated defensive line players in the MAC as you're going to find. Jaden Dolphin's back at linebacker as well. The secondary also has 3 of their starters back. So last season, this team finished 26th in scoring and 6th in the entire nation in pass defense. Seems a little high for a action team. So we'll see if that regresses just a little bit. If the rush defense can take a step forward, though, that's what Northern Illinois, I think, is going to have to do to have the consistency through their season, get back towards the top of the MAC. Northern Illinois is a program that's really been up and down. They've had some tremendous seasons and then some absolute clunkers. I think that there's a really good chance that Northern Illinois is one of the top 2 teams in the conference this year, depending on how that schedule breaks.
I like I like what they have on the defensive line, especially. I think that's going to be the strength of the entire team. And I don't have their schedule in front of me, but they play NC State, I believe.
Yeah, Notre Dame and NC
Yeah.
State are the 2 big ones out of conference. But then, honestly,
Notre Dame just taking it to the MAC this year. What are they doing?
they really are. The ramp to success is there. Western Illinois, Buffalo, and Massachusetts are the 3 games around Notre Dame and NC State. At Bowling Green will be tough. They get Toledo at home, but then maybe a little bit of a reprieve at Ball State, at Western Michigan, and Akron. I don't really expect much from certainly Ball State or Akron this year. Western Michigan, we'll see what their offense does, if they can be a little bit more competitive this season. At Miami of Ohio, that's the big one. That one could really have some conference, repercussions on the line, and then they'll end the season at home against Central Michigan. So 8-4, I think, is very clearly on the schedule, if not 9-3 this season. I think you would be thrilled if you could get that into Cobb.
Well, let's talk about Toledo, a team that we've come to expect at the top of these conference standings the last couple of years. But man, they lost really the whole conference lost a ton of players to the transfer portal,
Yeah.
but maybe no one was hit harder than Toledo, losing DeQuan Finn and Penny Boone to Baylor and UCF respectively.
Mhm.
Man, take me through, how are they replacing those guys? What do they have on the field this fall?
Well, so yeah, this was a team that you look at the transfer portal losses and you're like, oh gosh, I mean, what are you supposed to do if you're a Toledo fan? Tucker Gleason's the quarterback that's going to take over. He played in the Arizona Bowl for the Rockets. Didn't have a great performance, but I think you could see glimpses maybe of what the offense is going to look like under him in a 16-15 loss to Wyoming. That was just a defensive slugfest the entire game. I mean, Wyoming had one of the best defenses at the group of five level last year anyway. So you might not see that level of competition every single week. Um, I look at what they're going to have to do to replace that running game production. It's Jaquez Stewart, who's probably in line to take the new starting running back role. But this is a team that had almost 200 yards on the ground per game last season. So, Penny Boone walks out the door, went to what, Louisville, and then Ole Miss. Am I making that up? And now he's at UCF. Like couldn't find an academic home, I think. But point being, he's gone. He's not a Toledo Rocket anymore. Defensively, you lose Quinion Mitchell, who's a first round cornerback to Philadelphia. You do have some all max selections though in the back end. Maxon Hook, Darius Alexander are two guys that'll lead a defense that was 21st in scoring last year. So they kept their opponents off the board. They're going to really look at new starters like Avery Smith and Nasir Bowers to man the corners. Daniel Bolden leads the linebackers. So if you're Toledo, I think you're hoping to reload rather than rebuild this season. They were 27th nationally in total defense. I think it's very fair to expect a step back for the Rockets this year. But I tell you what, that schedule, it's very friendly. So even if you're a little bit more down on Toledo from the Jimmys and Joes perspective, the X's and O's of this schedule might be able to give you a run at a MAC title. They play Duquesne in Massachusetts to start, at Mississippi State, at Western Kentucky. You figure at worst you're 2-2 there. You get Miami of Ohio at home, which is a big win. At Buffalo, at Northern Illinois, home against Bowling Green. That's for sure the toughest part of their schedule. And then you face truly four unknowns. You play at Eastern Michigan, Central Michigan, Ohio, and Akron. We'll talk about those in the storylines. Those four teams are the furthest thing from complete football teams. They could be good and could go to a bowl game. They could also win two games. It's truly going to be kind of a roll of the dice, I figure, every Tuesday night in the action, which is a lot of fun to watch. But I think if you're Toledo, you feel pretty good about going 9-3. I think if everything clicks.
Yeah, and I think they have a chance in both of their non-conference road games, right? At Mississippi
Sure.
State, at Western Kentucky. I talked about the Hilltoppers defense a little bit ago. I don't think that scares too many people.
No.
And Mississippi State is a team completely rebuilding and maybe still trying to figure out who they are on September 14th, and maybe overlooking the Toledo Rockets just a little bit. So could play both of those games close, could mess around and come out with a win in one of two of those games. A lot of people are really high on Bowling Green this year. It seems like in preview season, Connor Bazelak is still playing college football. That was a fun reminder when I read your write up on Bowling
Yep.
Green. Take me through the rest of that team and Connor as well. We'll give him a shout out his time in the sun, but take me through the rest of that team. Why do you have them in your contender list?
Yeah, I think it's because of how much comes back for the Falcons this year. In a conference that was victimized by the transfer portal, like we talked about, Bowling Green has so much of their production on both sides of the ball coming back. It's not a team that did anything tremendous last year. They were 7-6, but they ranked 71st in total offense last year. I think that has a really good chance to go up with Bazelak back for his super extra COVID senior victory lap season. Terrion Stewart's the guy in the backfield that I think folks are really going to like. And there are clear improvements to make in this offense. They're definitely a team that I feel is more suited to the running game than the passing game. They didn't even pass for 190 yards a contest last year. But if they can take that step forward, they've got returners along the offensive line, 4 or 5. Harold Fannin Jr. is one of the best tight ends in the country. He's coming back. The pieces are there for Bowling Green's offense to be a more complete unit rather than just a team, that you expect to run for 175 yards a game. Defensively, very solid unit. Finished with the 51st scoring defense, the 12th best passing defense in the country. They were only allowing 180 yards through the air per game. So they didn't throw it a lot, but they also didn't allow you to beat them through the air. They're extremely confident in their defensive line. They have multi-year starters like Anthony Hawkins, Ali Saad, coming back to anchor that line. Linebacking crew certainly has some new faces, but the secondary is going to return a couple of starters. And crucially, they're adding NIU transfer CJ Brown to play safety. Falcon fans feel like he's a game changer that immediately elevates the level of that secondary by stepping in. And then you look at the schedule, and it's going to be ugly to start. Penn State and Texas A&M, probably are going to wreck the Falcons, but
We hope they're getting a good payday out of those two games back to back.
that's right. Fund the tennis programs while we're at it. But again, you get 3 games in Fordham, in Old Dominion, and Akron that you feel like you should win to prepare then for Northern Illinois, and then after that it's Toledo. Basically, that's scary down the rest of the schedule. Miami of Ohio is in the season finale. We play Kent State, Central Michigan, Western Michigan, and Ball State. I don't think there's a Bowling Green fan out there that's going to say that they're super scared of any of those teams that I just mentioned. Again, could Central Michigan's offense be really, really fun? Absolutely. We'll talk about Bert Emanuel Jr. in just a minute, but there's just not a lot of proven where I feel like, yeah, preseason, I'm picking these teams to beat Bowling Green. Again, it's another team here at the top of the conference that I think 8-4, maybe 9-3. If you catch fire and are able to beat Toledo or Miami of Ohio, I think you're feeling pretty good.
Well, let's jump down to the rest of those storylines that you laid out. Let's start with, you mentioned Central Michigan. We can start there. 5-7 a year ago, but had some fun, close games, both wins and losses. Seems like every team in the MAC has that every single year. It's just a coin flip, a lot of Tuesday, Wednesday nights. But tell me about Central Michigan. What has you excited about the offense, and why is it going to be plucky?
Yeah, so I was actually searching Chippewa Twitter to see their temperature on the season. And Bert Emanuel Jr., the quarterback, is back. Sophomore season, I believe, in Mount Pleasant. Looked really good at times last year, but a shoulder injury ended his season early. And then the Chips never recovered offensively. They went 5-7 a season ago, just could not get anything going offensively. 95th in scoring offense, 107th in passing. And the defense has never been anything special. They were 100 plus in a lot of defensive metrics last season. But if old Bert can put up points for the Chips this year, the offensive line's new, but the skill positions bring back some veteran talent. So I feel like this is a team that if they can, again, find a balanced offense, they were one of the top half of the country teams in running the football. I kind of like Jim McElwain's group to spring an upset or two along the schedule. I mean, all the contenders, right? I think each of the 4 contenders, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Miami, Ohio, Bowling Green, Toledo, and Northern Illinois. Yeah, I was going to say all 4 of them draw the Chips on the schedule. The Chippewas, I think, can get 1 of those 4 games. If they can get 2 of those 4 games, I think Central Michigan's one of the best stories in the country. I mean, depending on what happens the rest of the schedule, obviously. But if it just goes according to plan, right, and you get 2 of those big 4 games, I think this is going to be one of the more fun teams to watch on Tuesday night.
I could see that too. And, they were tantalizingly close to a bowl game last year, lost their last 3 games of the season to get to 5-7. So, yeah, that you never want to see that to end the year, but I love that they're positive about building momentum coming into the year. Team that might be on the opposite end of the spectrum coming out of spring ball is Ohio, because, man, that is the epitome of brutal for just modern college football and life in modern college football for these teams with what happened to Ohio in the portal.
Well, and not just
And
losing guys in the. Say that again.
and how late it was too.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say. It's one thing to lose guys in the portal. It's another thing to lose the plethora of starters to the portal in the spring window. You go through all of spring ball, have your spring game, and then guys are departing by the transfer portal. Like that is the downside for these group of 5 teams. They lose their quarterback, Curtis Rourke. He was Mr. Ohio. He was really the driving force, I think, behind Tim Albin winning 20 games in the last 2 seasons. Like, you realize that Ohio won 20 games in the last 2 seasons. There was a quote from another coach in the MAC in one of the preview magazines that I read that was essentially like, yeah, I'll be honest, did not have him doing that. Thought he was going to struggle. He proved us wrong, winning 20 games in 2 seasons. Super impressive with this Ohio Bobcats squad. It's a team that has traditionally been pretty stout defensively, and then Curtis Rourke in the offense, I think, able to get just enough done. They were 6th in scoring defense a season ago, 4th in total defense. But a lot of those starters just walked out the door. So Adonis Williams is the name to know. He's the all conference safety who's going to be patrolling the secondary. I just don't know what you're going to have in front of him to make any of those stops. I mean, the fall off for the Bobcats this year could be quite dramatic. You've got Syracuse, Kentucky, South Alabama, non-conference play. You're at Central Michigan, at Miami of Ohio, at Toledo. If you can get to a bowl game this year, I think Tim Albin's getting firm handshakes.
Yeah, honestly, and that's the goal for a lot of these teams, right? Just because how much parity is in the MAC, but it was quietly one of the best stories in all of college football that he was able to do what he did the last couple of years. So rooting for that program, certainly, just to defy the odds, at least personally, and get back to bowl season. Let's go up. My geography might be wrong, but up a state, I believe, to
Yeah, no,
Michigan.
you're right.
Yeah, okay.
The
Brain
team up north.
fart. It's been a long week already, man. We're recording this on a Wednesday. Eastern Western Michigan. I'll tell you, we can start with either one of those teams, but I wrote the Eastern Michigan preview last year.
Yeah.
And man, I talked myself into a potential MAC championship for the Eagles at the factory, and they did not live up to those expectations, unfortunately. But so tell me about them. What are we expecting from the Eagles and Broncos this year?
Well, I'll say this: Eastern Michigan, the fact that they got to a bowl game was a miracle last year. They went 6-7. Um, their offense was atrocious last year. 117th in scoring, 112th in rushing, 122nd in passing, and 129th in total offense. And that team won 6 games a season ago. That math normally doesn't math, but they were able to get it done. Chris Creighton, he's in his 17th year, I think, overall. They're welcoming a new quarterback in Cole Snyder. He comes over from Buffalo. Samson Evans is gone. He was really the heart and soul of that offense last year at 2,100 total yards over his career at the factory. They've got new turf this year,
Yeah,
which
that's big.
that's great. Max Crosby gave them a $1 million donation. They put that to work, so they got rid of the track around the football field. I think they have a bright future at Eastern Michigan, but I don't really know what to expect this year. I think the defense carried them last season. They're going to be fine. They return a couple of starters, especially up front. 3 of the front 4 are back. But the offense is just entirely new. I think they have 3 projected starters back from that unit, which may not be a bad thing with how bad that offense was a season ago. Yeah, I think you could get to a bowl game, and like I said, the future looks bright, but maybe not 2024.
And tell me about their cross-state rivals in Western Michigan. 4-8 last year,
Yeah.
struggling with how good their rival has been the last few years, apparently after having some really strong seasons not too long ago.
Yeah, Lance Taylor's squad in Kalamazoo, they expected much better than 4-8 last year. It was really disappointing for Western Michigan. Remember, this is a program that I guess a decade ago now was playing in the Cotton Bowl
Yeah,
under PJ Fleck. Like that was a team. Which, first of all, how is that a decade ago? When I read that PJ Fleck was in his 9th year
yeah.
at Minnesota, that blew my mind.
Cooper
Uh,
Rush, right, was the quarterback of that team.
I believe so. That sounds right. That's also how long Cooper
No,
Rush.
he was Central Michigan. I apologize.
Oh,
He was
okay.
not Western Michigan.
I was gonna say, there was man, whoever their quarterback was, they had a big old story on him. Him and Corey Davis were the heart and soul of that team. But again, a decade ago. So back to present time. Hayden Wolf is the quarterback. He played in 7 games last year. There's a chance, man, when you already have rumors out of spring and fall camp that if the veteran can't get it done, let's see what the true freshman has. That would be one JD Davis the second. He's had a really good fall camp from what I read, and folks are whispering that the job might be his sooner than later. So Jalen Buckley was freshman of the year last year in the MAC from the running back position. I think the offense is likely going to have to go through him, but it's a passing attack that was tied for 84th in the country last year, just over 210 yards per game, and then went 4-8. They just weren't explosive offensively. So Hayden Wolf, I think he's got to inject some life into that passing game. And if not, like I said, we'll see what the kid has.
Yeah, fascinating transitions there. Let's talk about a couple teams that are on the hot seat, a couple coaches that are on the hot seat in at Ball State and Akron. The guy at Ball State,
Like new.
Mike New, thank you. He's been there a long time,
Yeah.
and it seems like this might be finally the make or break year for him.
It really does. The folks in Muncie, the chirping is growing louder and louder. I think for New's job, it was actually surprising that New kept his job last year. They went 4-8. I follow a couple of Ball State guys on Twitter. They really thought he was going to be shown the door, and then I believe they won. No, they didn't. They won 2 in a row. They won Northern against Northern Illinois, and they won against Kent State, and then they almost beat Miami of Ohio in the season finale. They lost 17-15, and for whatever reason, that was good enough to keep his job. New at Ball State, he's 37-56 in 8 seasons. So not exactly an impressive tenure. I don't know what the realistic expectation should be for Ball State, but it sounds like they would really like more. Uh, I don't see a whole lot of improvement on this team. They just don't have anybody back on really either side of the ball. So it's new starters up and down the line. It's tough to see them getting back to a bowl game. Joe Moorhead's the other end of this stick at Akron. When Moorhead came in from, was it Mississippi? No, it was Washington, right? Wasn't he the offensive coordinator up at Washington for one season under Kalen DeBoer? Am I making that up?
I don't think you are. I'll look that up while you're talking and
That
check
sounds
that out.
right. Anyway, he was supposed to bring, offensive genius to Akron. Finally, Zips football was going to be fun. This was their ticket to winning more than 2 games a season. And dang it, the Zips are 4-20 under Joe Moorhead. So it seems like the athletic department really made like a full faith effort to back Moorhead, to say this is our guy. We're going to ride it out with him. We know success won't happen day one. But now you're in year 3 and you have 4 wins to show for it. They've got Ben Finley, who comes in from NC State and Cal. That's a fun name. He's going to sling the ball all over the yard for Akron. Jordan Simmons comes down from Michigan State to tote the rock. So they've got some talent. Alex Adams is back from injury, looking to repeat an excellent 2022 season at the wide receiver position. And the defense really did improve last year. Not the side of the ball you would have thought would take a step forward under Moorhead's regime, but they finished at 31st in the country in total defense. I know the competition is, not SEC quality exactly, but still some signs of life, I think, for Akron. Antavius Fish, one of the best names in college football. He's the leader at linebacker for the Zips. And then CJ Nunnally, the fourth, is a guy to know off the edge. He had 7 sacks, I believe, last season. So Akron may be in the cellar, but gosh, if I was going to bet on one team out of the conference that would come out of obscurity and make a bowl game, I think it might be Akron. Maybe
Interesting.
that's just the college football 25 hope in me, but the pieces are there, man. Like they've just got to win football games.
So you were close in saying Washington. It was Oregon that he was the offensive
Okay,
coordinator at
Oregon.
after getting
Pacific Northwest.
canned. After getting canned at Mississippi State.
Yes.
And Zach Terrell was the quarterback at Western Michigan when they made the Cotton Bowl. So
Gotcha.
Full circle on that one. Mitch, do you have any thoughts on Kent State or Buffalo as we close out this MAC preview?
Yeah, Kent State under Kenny Burns, they went 1-11 last year. They had lost everybody from the 2022 season. Truly had nobody back. Anybody worth their salt transferred out of the program. Sean Lewis left for Colorado and then got, essentially canned halfway through that season. What a terrible move by Dion. Sean Lewis is now at San Diego State, revitalizing the Aztecs. But Kenny Burns got an extension after going 1-11, which is normally, I think, if you did that on the video game, you go, that's kind of weird. But Kent State wanted to give him a vote of confidence. We know what you were up against. We're going to invest in you. This is your program. So, Kent State's got some guys coming back. They've got their quarterback and Tommy Yu. I'm not going to try and say his last name. He's back. A couple guys in the front seven, specifically in the linebacking core, that are back for the Flashes. For Buffalo, they've got a new head coach this year. Pete Lambeau comes over. Mo Linguist is now the defensive coordinator at Alabama, or co-DC at Alabama. And he had one really good season at Buffalo and then just could not get them to the postseason. So I feel like Buffalo is really underachieved in the last few years. CJ Ogbonna is going to be the quarterback there. And they've got some weapons. Nick McMillan, Tajee Johnson, I think are fun options out wide. Jake Orlando should be a decent option at tight end. The offensive line is stout. They've got 4 or 5 returners coming back from a season ago. And then if there is a bright spot on the Buffalo defense, it's in the secondary. They've got a number of returners back there. So, both of these programs are just groups that have underachieved or had the deck stacked against them. I think in Kent State's case, I don't really expect a ton out of them in 2024. But the fun thing about the action is truly any Tuesday night, it doesn't matter what the standings are. Like the bottom barrel team can knock off a conference contender. I think it just comes down to, can one of these two teams or both of these two teams, can they find an identity and can they find some consistency? If they can find Kent State football or Buffalo football this season, maybe that translates to 3, 4, 5 wins, maybe even going to a bowl game in Buffalo's case, but tough to predict from where we sit now.
Any given Tuesday, right? Or Wednesday or Friday or Saturday, whatever day of the week we're playing action on, we'll find some craziness. That was over an hour on Conference USA and MAC, Mitch.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone tell you we don't like the G5.
That's right. Absolutely.
Well, hey, that is going to do it for this episode. I guess I'll close it out because I'm in this last portion. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. We are almost done with preview season. Come back next week for the Sun Belt, Mountain West, and the Pac-2. And we'll close out preview season. Mitch, this time next week. Potluck episode. And this time next week, we'll be talking about real life football on the field at week 0. So excited for that, guys. Make sure you're following along at 3TechPod on Instagram and Twitter. Like and subscribe on YouTube and your podcast platform of choice. Make sure to give us a little review and rating while you're there. It does help us out, help with the algorithms and all that good stuff. For Mitch Mason, the MAC master, and for myself, the Conference USA enjoyer, I'm Trey Reeves. I'll see you next time.
Gracious him. How about